Hey friends, welcome back to Medieval Historian. Buckle up because tonight we're diving headfirst into the filth, funk, and full-volume chaos of medieval town life. This video is all about the real medieval towns. Not the dreamy cobblestone streets you've seen in fantasy films, but the raw, noisy, nose-wrinkling reality. We're talking overflowing gutters, screaming street vendors, air thick with everything from sweat to sewage, and a level of background noise that makes a nightclub sound like a library. Now, think about where you live today. Maybe you've got running water, trash pickup, maybe even double-glazed windows that keep the city hum out at night. Now, take all of that and throw it out the window. Welcome to a place where the streets double as toilets, beer is safer than water, and a quiet moment is more rare than a nobleman with clean underwear. So, before we begin and before you get too comfortable, like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next descent into the past. And tell me in the comments, what city and country are you watching from? And what time is it right now where you are? I'm just a nerd who loves digging into history's darkest corners, and it always blows my mind to see people tuning in from all over the world. Now, let's begin our journey into the grime. How dirty, loud, and smelly life was in a medieval town. Welcome to your new home. Congratulations, it's the 14th century, and you've just been dropped into the heart of a medieval town. Not a noble estate or a quiet farm, no. This is the urban hub of dirt, disease, and decibels. The town's walls may offer protection from bandits, wolves, and the occasional angry knight. But inside those walls is a bubbling stew of humanity, livestock, waste, and questionable smells that cling to your nostrils like a drunk relative who won't stop talking. You're surrounded by tightly packed timber houses that lean over the streets as if whispering secrets to each other, or maybe just slowly collapsing from the weight of mold and time. There's no pavement beneath your feet, only a sludge of soil, dung, and yesterday's dinner scraps tossed from an upstairs window. You dodge a splash of murky liquid just in time. Was that soup? You don't ask. The sounds hit you next. There's no such thing as quiet in a medieval town. Roosters scream, dogs bark, children wail, blacksmiths hammer metal like they're angry at the earth itself, and church bells ring every few hours to remind you that God is watching, and He's not impressed. Street hawkers are yelling about their radishes as if they're rare gems. Somewhere nearby, someone is playing a lute badly. A woman is shouting at a pig. The pig is shouting back. And layered beneath it all is the constant drone of voices, clanging tools, and the occasional "Gardy-loo," a helpful warning that something unpleasant is about to rain down from an upstairs window. This is the beginning of your day. The smell of stale ale, manure, and unwashed humanity is as natural here as breathing, which ironically becomes harder the deeper you venture into the market square. You might be tempted to hold your breath, but don't bother. If the smell doesn't get you, the taste of the air will. It's thick, humid, and carries the unmistakable aroma of despair mixed with onion. Everything around you feels alive, but not in a good way, more like crawling or fermenting. You'll get used to it, or you won't. No one really does. There are no quiet corners, no fresh breezes, and no escape from the layered orchestra of filth and noise. Welcome to the chaos. It doesn't get better from here. It only gets louder, smellier, and infinitely more uncomfortable. As the sun reluctantly peeks over the horizon, you are greeted not by birdsong or morning dew, but by the acrid scent of human waste warmed gently by the rising heat. It's the medieval version of an alarm clock, less gentle chime, more kick to the face. The street is already alive with movement. Milkmaids trudge past with sloshing pails, their boots caked in yesterday's slop. Blacksmiths stoke their forges. and the first clang of metal rings out like a war cry. Bakers fan flames beneath brick ovens, and the scent of fresh bread almost cuts through the manure-heavy air. But don't get too excited. That bread was kneaded by hands that probably wiped with moss. Beneath your feet, the ground is less street and more living compost. There's no plumbing, no gutters, and definitely no sanitation service. Waste, human, animal, and culinary, is swept into the middle of the road to be slowly trampled, spread, and, if you're lucky, absorbed by the dirt. The town has a system. A designated muck collector comes by once a week with a shovel and cart. He's the most hated and ironically most essential man in town. But he's late. He's always late. Until then, the townspeople continue the noble tradition of pretending the filth doesn't exist while simultaneously adding to it. And then there's the stables. Every second building has a cow, goat, or horse tethered nearby, each contributing its own fresh layer to the ever-growing mosaic of smells. A nearby donkey lets out a mournful bray, the kind that makes you question the existence of joy. Chickens flap past your feet, squawking at invisible threats. Someone's dog just took a dump on a pile of fish heads. No one bats an eye. This is normal. This is Tuesday. You try to step carefully, but careful isn't good enough. The street is slick from last night's rain mixing with everything else. Your foot slips slightly in what feels suspiciously like a mixture of ash, ale, and something far worse. Nearby, a drunkard groans and empties his stomach in a corner, adding yet another note to the town's aromatic symphony. The sound blends right in with the groaning oxen, the grinding carts, and the bells ringing for morning prayer. Because even in this filth, you still have to thank God for the privilege of waking up alive and not buried beneath the waste pile behind the tannery. Congratulations. You've survived your first morning breath in the medieval town. Don't worry, your sense of smell will come back in a few years. Maybe. You wake up not in a bed, but on a collapsing pile of straw that vaguely resembles a mattress if you squint hard enough and have never seen a real one. It's not even your own straw, your siblings, your parents, and possibly a random uncle who never left all share this one-room wooden hovel. The family goat slept in the corner, the chicken laid an egg in your shoe, and there's something small and hairy rustling under the hay. Don't worry, that's not a rat. Probably. The scent that greets you isn't morning air. It's sweat, mildew, and old wool soaked in generations of secrets. The walls weep moisture. The floor is dirt, and there's no privacy, no doors, no curtains, no chance to escape the sweet intimacy of 5 people snoring in unison. This home is technically a single-room cottage, but let's not get fancy. It's a box of suffering. There's a fire pit in the center, but no chimney. Smoke rises and clings to the rafters before descending gently onto your lungs like a wool blanket made of cough. Your eyes sting before you're even fully awake. You take a breath and get a mouthful of soot, goat fur, and someone's unbrushed breath. Welcome to morning. The sun slips through the one slit in the wall that functions as a window. It's covered with oiled cloth, not glass, because you're poor, and also because glass is worth more than your life. Your blanket? A coarse slab of wool last washed when your mother still had hope. It's damp from body heat and now weighs as much as a wet pig. As you shift, a wave of lice abandon your collarbone like it's spring break. Every joint in your body cracks like a cursed violin. You're 23 years old and already sound like firewood. There's no such thing as fresh sheets, only layers of filth you've grown attached to. You pull on your one outfit. It hasn't been washed since winter, smells like boiled onions, and features mysterious stains that may be stew or blood or stew blood. Either way, it's fashionably medieval. If you're lucky, there's a bucket of cold water by the door for a splash of the face. If not, you start the day with a good old-fashioned grime glaze. Don't think about it too hard. This is your house, your barn, your bed, your everything. There is no, later today, I'll clean this. There is only survival, scratching, and pretending not to smell anything. Silence? That's a luxury no one in a medieval town can afford. The moment your eyes creak open, assuming they ever closed in the first place, you're hit by a wall of noise that doesn't stop, doesn't fade, and doesn't care that you were dreaming about cheese for the first time in weeks. The rooster? He's not cute. He's a winged demon that screams into your soul at the exact moment you dare to think about going back to sleep. One rooster starts, then the others join in, and suddenly it's a full-on avian riot echoing off the timber walls like medieval dubstep. But the birds are only the first act. Outside your home, the village is waking up in stages. Each layer of noise stacks like an infernal symphony. The church bells begin to ring. Not gently, not thoughtfully. These bells are massive hunks of metal struck with all the subtlety of a blacksmith with anger issues. They don't chime, they bludgeon. Each toll shakes the air, rattles your teeth, and reminds you that time exists and it hates you. Then come the voices. Angry ones, loud ones, drunk ones. Couples argue while carrying slop buckets. Children scream joyfully, then scream from injury, then scream just because. A man is shouting to sell fish that smells like it gave up on life days ago. Someone else is haggling over a turnip like it's a hostage negotiation. Blacksmiths start pounding metal at dawn like it's a race to make you deaf before breakfast. The echo of iron on iron hits with a sharpness that feels personal. Horses neigh, dogs bark, pigs grunt, and somewhere, inexplicably, someone is blowing a horn. For what? No one knows. That's just what Greg does. He's the town horn guy. The background buzz never fades, it intensifies. Every sound overlaps, collides, and continues until you're certain the very concept of peace was a lie told by monks to make you go to bed early. Even indoors, there's no escape. Someone's snoring. Someone else is talking in their sleep. The goat makes unsettling throat noises. Your uncle coughs up something that sounds like it once had legs. You lie there, eyes open, wondering if the ringing in your ears is tinnitus or the sound of reality fraying. Welcome to morning in a medieval town. Your alarm clock is everything, and it all wants to be louder than everything else. You finally decided to crawl out of your haystack of horrors. Good for you. Now it's time to test your reflexes, because the floor beneath your feet isn't just cold. It's an interactive obstacle course of bodily fluids, spoiled food, and questionable animal contributions. You plant your foot, hoping for solid ground, but instead land in something both squishy and slippery. Could be a puddle from last night's rain. Could be goat pee, could be soup. Whatever it is, it's soaking into your only sock like it signed a lease. There's no wooden floor here, just packed dirt, uneven from years of trampling, spills, and God knows what else. Mud? Maybe. Manure? Definitely. And since the family shares the same room for sleeping, eating, and relieving themselves in emergencies, the floor has absorbed centuries of secrets. One corner is darker than the others. Don't step there. That's where Uncle Ed had the turnip fever last month. No one's cleaned it. No one will. Soap is a mythical substance here, and scrubbing the floor is reserved for saints or lunatics. Instead, you do what everyone else does. Shuffle, tiptoe, and pretend it's just natural earth. The animals don't help. The family goat thinks the living space is a racetrack and gallops through like a possessed toddler. Chickens leave little gifts wherever they please. And your cousin's dog? He's decided your bedding is his new toilet. You glare. He wags his tail. No regrets. The flies have already moved in, buzzing from surface to surface, carrying filth like little airborne landlords. At this point, the entire floor feels alive, soft in the wrong places, sticky in others, and always cold enough to numb your toes by breakfast. You try to avoid the worst patches, but it's like dodging raindrops in a thunderstorm. Your foot slides again, this time on a crust of dried something. Possibly stew, possibly last week's unfortunate accident involving the baby. Every surface is stained, every crevice teeming with microbial horrors. There's no disinfectant, no mop, no Swiffer to save you. Just your bare feet, a short prayer, and the desperate hope that nothing squelches when you step on it. So, congrats, you've started your day face to face with a bacterial minefield. Welcome to the medieval morning shuffle. Watch your step and don't drop the bucket. When nature calls in a medieval town, it doesn't whisper politely. It screams at you with urgency and a complete lack of dignity. There's no porcelain throne waiting in a quiet, tiled room with scented candles and fluffy mats. No, your bathroom options are more rustic. And by rustic, I mean horrifying. If you're lucky enough to live in a wealthier home, you get a wooden bucket in the corner. If you're not, it's the alley out back or the street in front. Either way, get ready to drop your pants and your pride. Let's start with the bucket, shall we? It's shared by everyone in the house, which means by sunrise, it's already full to the brim with the previous night's contributions. It stinks, it overflows, and someone, usually the youngest or most unfortunate, is tasked with hauling it outside to empty. Where, you ask? Into the street? Just open the shutters, yell "Gardy-loo" as a half-hearted warning, and toss. What's in it doesn't matter. It's wet, warm, and everyone hopes it lands far away. Spoiler, it doesn't. For the street dwellers, there's a wooden bench behind the house with a hole cut into it and a pit below, if you're lucky. If not, it's just a corner of the yard where everyone does their business. The stench wafts through the neighborhood like a ghost with a grudge. And in towns with no yards, people go wherever there's space. Behind carts, beside wells, near walls. Don't be surprised if you round a corner and walk into someone mid-squat making awkward eye contact. It's less a violation and more a community bonding moment. If you're in a castle, things get fancy. You get to relieve yourself in a garderobe, a small stone chamber with a hole that drops straight into the moat. Practical, right? Until you remember moats double as defense systems, and enemies occasionally crawl up through that same chute with unfortunate timing. That's right, you're never safe, even while pooping. And the smell? Imagine a mixture of swamp, sewage, and dead fish simmering in the sun. Now imagine that every day. Toilet paper doesn't exist. People wipe with rags, straw, moss, their hand, or nothing. Hygiene is optional, shame is inevitable, and hand-washing is a myth, which explains why medieval handshakes were rare and why everyone kept their hands suspiciously visible at all times. So, when nature calls in a medieval town, it's not a private moment. It's public, pungent, and potentially perilous. Choose your corner wisely. Step outside your front door, and what greets you isn't a charming cobblestone lane or a pleasant country breeze. It's a river of slime masquerading as a road. The medieval town street is not a place you walk through. It's a gauntlet you survive. There's no pavement, no drainage, no sense of civic responsibility. Just a deep, squelching trough of filth where every footstep is a gamble between solid ground and sinking into yesterday's stew of sewage, mud, urine, horse droppings, and whatever your neighbor threw out the window last night. The center of the street is the designated dumping ground. It's where chamber pots are emptied, animal guts are tossed, and rotting food meets its afterlife. The logic? Keep the waste out of your house and in the communal cesspit called everywhere else. During dry spells, the mess dries into a flaky crust that crumbles underfoot like the worst kind of snow. When it rains, and oh, it will rain, it transforms into a slick, knee-deep broth of disease, just waiting for a traveler's boot to betray them. One misstep, and you're not just filthy. You're baptized in the worst humanity has to offer. Add to that the endless parade of traffic. Carts grind through the sludge, their wheels carving trenches deeper with each pass. Livestock wander freely, dropping fresh offerings wherever they please. Chickens peck at bones. Dogs dig through fish heads. Pigs squeal as they root through what's left of a turnip. Children play in this horror as if it's natural, because for them, it is. It's not unusual to see a toddler giggling with a stick poking a dead rat. That's the medieval version of a beach toy. And let's not forget the smell. It's not just bad, it's legendary. Layers upon layers of decay ferment in the open air, mingling into a scent that refuses to be ignored. You don't breathe it in, you wear it. It sticks to your clothes, your hair, your soul. It wafts into your food and your dreams. And if you dare complain, people shrug. That's just how it is. If anything, a stronger stench means the town is busy, and busy means trade, and trade means maybe you won't starve this winter. So, grin, bear it, and keep moving. But watch your step. Some of those puddles bite back. If there's one creature truly thriving in the medieval town, it's the fly. Not just a few buzzing around your head like a mild inconvenience. No, this is an airborne invasion. A living cloud of wings and disease that follows you wherever you go. Flies cover everything. The food, the dung, your face. They crawl into your nostrils while you sleep. They land on your lips mid-sentence. Swatting them away is as futile as praying for clean socks. They're not visitors, they're roommates. You can't eat without them. Bread, covered, pottage, swimming, meat. Oh, they got there first, laid eggs, and invited the maggots to the feast. And because there's no refrigeration and minimal preservation, every meal is basically a gamble, one that the flies have already bet against. Try shooing them away and they come right back, like drunk friends who don't take the hint. Even candles can't keep them at bay. They just die in the wax and get served as a bonus protein. But flies are just the start. Lice are part of your daily wardrobe. They live in your clothes, your hair, your bedding. Everyone itches, no one talks about it. Fleas hop from person to person like gossip, delivering itchy rumors and the occasional bubonic plague. And then there are the smells. Personal hygiene is more theory than practice, and bodies ferment under wool and grime. You can smell someone coming before you see them, and not in a poetic, romantic way. The stench hits like a punch, a hot blend of foot rot, unwashed armpits, fermented breath, and livestock. Imagine sharing a one-room hut with 6 people and 0 baths. That's not family, that's biohazard. Perfume, when it exists, doesn't fix anything. It just adds a floral top note to the stench, like spraying lavender on a corpse. People wear herbs in their hats or hang garlic around their necks, not for vampires, but to mask the ever-present stank of decay and dung. It doesn't help. Nothing does. You eventually stop noticing the smell because your brain gives up and redirects resources to survival. And visitors? They don't stand a chance. One sniff, and they're either vomiting or crying, or both. There's no word for fresh in a medieval town. Clean is relative. If you only smell like sheep and old beer, people think you've had a bath. So when the flies circle your head like a halo, just know you've been accepted. If you're hoping the marketplace is a reprieve from the filth and funk of a home, let that dream die now. This isn't a charming medieval bazaar with cheerful vendors selling fresh herbs and roasted meats under colorful tents. This is a sensory assault zone. The marketplace is the town's beating heart, and that heart smells like it's been dead for a week. As you approach, the scent hits first. A thick, choking blend of animal musk, rotting produce, dried blood, and body odor that could peel the bark off a tree. Mixed into that stew is the aroma of dried fish, which no longer smells like the ocean, and more like a failed experiment in mummification. Flies are everywhere, swirling in thick clouds, dancing from stall to stall like they're enjoying themselves more than you ever will. Vendors shout over one another in an endless competition for attention. "Turnips, fresh from the dirt," yells one man, who looks like he lost a fight with a sheep. "Eel, alive this morning," screams another, while holding something that might have been alive last week maybe. Everything is loud. The air vibrates with yelling, haggling, livestock bleating, and the rhythmic sound of knives hacking meat on wooden blocks that haven't been cleaned since the plague. Blood pools under the butcher's table, where chunks of flesh hang from rusty hooks, attracting every fly within a 5-mile radius. The fishmonger hasn't washed his hands, possibly ever, and his merchandise glistens not with freshness, but with the oily sheen of despair. Meanwhile, the cheese vendor is offering something that smells so potent it could be weaponized. People still buy it. In fact, they argue over it like it's gold. Children dart between legs, occasionally stealing apples or tripping over chickens. Someone's goat breaks loose and begins chewing a merchant's apron. The merchant doesn't stop yelling. The goat doesn't stop chewing. It's a standoff. Somewhere in the chaos, a fight breaks out over a loaf of bread, and no one even pauses. This is normal. There's no order, no cleanliness, and no quiet. But there's energy, and in the midst of it all, you start to understand. This chaos is life. It's food, it's money, it's gossip, it's survival. You hold your breath, step over a dead pigeon, and hope your coin purse doesn't get cut from your belt while you're too busy gagging on the cheese fumes. Just when your ears start to adjust to the roar of the market, you step past a corner and into the forge's territory. A part of town where sound isn't just loud, it's aggressive. The blacksmith shop is less a workplace and more a battlefield. And the weapons? Noise, fire, and metal. The air is heavy with heat, not warmth. Heat like opening an oven filled with burnt iron. The forge bellows like a dragon with bronchitis, pumping air into a fire that glows white-hot. Sparks leap and dance with every hammer strike. And those hammer strikes? They come in rhythm, each one slamming into your ears like an insult you didn't see coming. Bam, bam, bam. You don't hear your thoughts. They've been pounded flat and welded to the anvil. The blacksmith, shirtless and coated in soot, moves with purpose. His muscles flex with each swing as he shapes glowing metal into horseshoes, knives, and sometimes mysterious tools no one bothers to name. He sweats like the fire is inside him. His beard is singed at the tips. His apprentice, barely old enough to hold a bucket, runs errands at top speed, carrying tongs, fetching coal, dodging fire, and occasionally getting yelled at for breathing too loudly. Every part of the shop is alive. Chains rattle, coals crackle, bellows gasp, metal sizzles as it's plunged into water, releasing a hiss so sharp it sounds like the devil's whisper. Smoke curls from every corner, mixing with the ever-present stench of burning hooves, hot leather, and sweaty despair. There's no ventilation, just a hole in the roof and prayers the wind doesn't blow. Smoke back into the smith's face. Customers don't linger. They shout over the racket, point to a blade or tool, then quickly retreat before their eardrums implode. But even standing outside the smithy, the sound haunts you. It echoes down alleys and through the walls of nearby homes. It's the town's unofficial anthem, a steel-crushing lullaby that never stops. Day or night, the hammer falls. Even in your dreams, you hear it. There's no silence in a medieval town, and the blacksmith makes sure of that. He is the percussion section of the apocalypse. And the forge? It's where the noise is born, baptized in fire and let loose into the streets like thunder on repeat. Before radios, newspapers, or a half-decent notice board, there was the town crier, the walking, shouting, bell-ringing chaos machine who delivered news whether you wanted it or not. You don't go to the news. The news finds you, aggressively, loudly, and often right outside your door while you're still chewing your gritty breakfast. The town crier doesn't have a microphone, but he has lungs forged by years of yelling over livestock and fire pits. He rings his handbell like he's summoning demons, then shouts the latest decrees, taxes, executions, and who got caught sleeping with whose wife. His voice is gravel mixed with old ale. The bell clangs like a punch to the brain. There's no escape. You can be elbow deep in your slop bucket and suddenly, hear ye, the Lord declares new tariffs on turnips. Great. Now your day is ruined and turnips cost more. He reads announcements from a tattered scroll, most of which were written by someone who hasn't seen a peasant in years. By royal command, he shouts, all market wagons must be weighed by the reeve. Nobody knows what that means, including the reeve, but it's shouted loud enough that even the pigs look annoyed. Sometimes the town crier improvises. He's the medieval version of a podcaster who never hits pause. Old Widow Marjorie's cow gave birth to a calf with 2 heads. People gather. The gossip is live. No editing, no filter. You hear local scandal, public punishment schedules, and the occasional war announcement between bread prices and sermon times. This is the town's entertainment, an info dump screamed at maximum volume. He's not above drama either. Every minor update is delivered with the urgency of a royal funeral. Be it known, he bellows. The baker's apprentice fell into the oven. He waits. The crowd gasps. He survived, but the bread did not. Groans, chuckles. A chicken runs by. The crier just keeps going. And the smell? It hits you halfway through his performance. He's been yelling since dawn, sweating into his cloak, possibly hasn't bathed since the last plague scare. His breath is fermented onions with a hint of regret. But no one tells him to stop. He's too important, too loud, too armed with a bell. You nod, pretend to listen, and try not to stand downwind. He rings again. More news is coming whether you want it or not. Medieval towns don't sleep. They twitch, they groan, they howl. If you thought the sunrise cacophony was the worst of it, you haven't listened to the daily soundtrack that plays on loop from dawn to dusk, and often well past that. It's a full-body experience where your ears are the first to surrender. Blacksmiths hammer relentlessly. Vendors yell over one another. Livestock complain constantly. And kids, dear saints, the kids, shout, cry, scream, and laugh with the same energy that summons demons in folklore. Babies wail in harmony with screeching goats. A woman throws a shoe at her husband. A drunk man sings off-key about pickled onions while urinating in the alley. And all of this happens at once, layered like a cursed medieval symphony. Everywhere you go, someone is making noise. Arguing over meat, haggling over bread, cursing about taxes. No one speaks to each other. They yell through each other like ships passing in a sea of shared misery. Even the dogs bark louder here. They don't bark at things. They bark because they exist. The church bells chime like they're offended, banging out the hours with zero mercy. Want a nap? Good luck. Some kids learned a new scream. He's proud of it. He uses it every 5 minutes. Craftsmen are no better. Cobblers slap leather. Carpenters saw with the enthusiasm of a man escaping his emotions. Tailors shout for needles. Bakers thud dough like it owes them money. There's no rhythm, only chaos. Even laughter sounds like a warning. And then there's the music. Yes, medieval towns had music. No, that doesn't mean it was good. Some bard with a half-tuned lute and a questionable beard strums outside the tavern, howling lyrics about heroic kings and tragic goats. His audience? 3 drunks, a passed-out pig, and a rat chewing rhythmically on a piece of cabbage. This is considered a performance. There's no escape. No quiet fields, no meditative corners, just noise layered on filth, punctuated by screams, bells, barking, and the occasional high-pitched flute solo that sounds like the death rattle of joy. This isn't ambiance, it's endurance. By mid-morning, the town has truly hit its stride. If your definition of stride includes knee-deep sludge, blistered feet, and the distant sound of someone gagging behind the fish stall. The sun is higher now, and with it comes the heat that doesn't just warm the filth in the streets. It activates it. The morning mist lifts to reveal a glistening layer of decay on every surface. The smells that once hovered discreetly now slap you in the face like an angry nun with a compost fetish. You're supposed to be productive now. It's time to get things done, assuming your body hasn't already started protesting. You're wrapped in the same wool tunic you slept in, which is now stuck to your back with sweat, grime, and regret. Your armpits itch, your thighs chafe. You've got a splinter in your foot and something squishy inside your boot that might be a slug, or just your own hope dissolving. Tasks are endless and unrelenting. If you're a peasant, you're either hauling water from a river thick with upstream disasters or gathering herbs from the local garden, which also happens to be where the dog goes to relieve himself. If you're a tradesperson, you're in your dark, airless shop working with tools that haven't been cleaned since your grandfather's funeral. Want a break? Tough. If you stop working, you stop earning. If you stop earning, you stop eating. And if you stop eating, well, someone else will take your place before the stool even goes cold. And let's talk about the filth. Again, because it hasn't gone anywhere. Mud cakes your hands. Your face has streaks of soot or soil or something more suspicious. Your clothes are stiffer than yesterday, your skin a living map of grime and insect bites. Flies hover like tiny demons, inspecting your ears, mouth, and open sores. You slap one away, only for 2 more to take its place. It's not even noon, and your dignity has already packed up and left. Noise continues, of course. The bells ring for some minor saint no one remembers. A pot explodes in a nearby cottage. Someone screams. A chicken gets into a shop and causes chaos. A baby cries, a man curses the sky, and through it all you trudge forward, soaked in sweat, smeared with filth, hoping your next step won't slide into something warm. Congratulations, you've reached peak medieval productivity. Only 10 more hours to go. There's nothing quite like the medieval butcher shop, a charming mix of blood, bone, and butchered expectations. It's not so much a store as it is an open-air horror show. No glass counters, no refrigeration, just wooden slabs soaked with ancient blood, iron hooks dangling glistening slabs of meat, and the constant presence of scavengers. Flies, rats, stray dogs, and occasionally desperate children with suspiciously clean knives. You walk up, and the smell hits you like a wall. Old meat, fresh blood, singed hair, and something unmistakably intestinal. The butcher stands behind a blood-caked table, knife in hand, apron stained like a crime scene. He's carving a pig with the enthusiasm of a man settling a personal grudge. Meat flies, bones crack. Customers shout over the noise to place their orders, pointing at hunks of flesh and hoping they're not buying a piece that got dropped in the dirt. Spoiler, they are. There's no weighing scale. Prices are guessed, argued, shouted, and eventually settled with a grunt and a handful of coins that may or may not be real. You want steak? Good luck. You're getting off cuts, tendon, fat, maybe a chunk of lung. Liver's a delicacy, which is concerning, because it smells like the cow had a bad attitude. Sausages hang in a limp row above the table, sweating in the sun. No one knows what's in them. No one asks. The cutting board is never cleaned. The tools are never sharpened. And the scraps are just tossed into the gutter out front, where dogs, cats, pigs, and gods know what fight over them in broad daylight. The squeals, growls, and crunching sounds create a soundtrack so grotesque it drowns out your own hunger. Still, you queue, you wait. Because meat, real meat, is rare, expensive, and worth suffering for, even if it might kill you later. Blood drips steadily from the table's edge, pooling around your boots. A rat scurries by with a chunk of something vaguely red in its mouth. The butcher wipes his hands on his apron and flashes you a grin that shows more missing teeth than present ones. Next, he growls, and you step forward, questioning all your life choices. There's a sound that pierces through even the din of a medieval marketplace. It's not the blacksmith's hammer, not the butcher's cleaver. It's the unmistakable, soul-curdling scream of someone getting a tooth pulled in public, without anesthetic, dignity, or even a chair. Welcome to medieval dentistry, where your options are limited, your pain is infinite, and your dentist is also your barber. There's no private clinic, no sterile tools, no calming music or sedatives. Just a stool in the town square, a rusty pair of iron tongs, and a man in a blood-spattered smock who cuts hair in the morning and yanks molars after lunch. He's cheerfully humming as he checks the edge on his tools, which haven't been cleaned since the last crusade. He might splash a bit of ale on them for sanitation, but more often he just wipes the blade on his sleeve and gets to work. The patient, if you can call them that, is gripping the arms of the stool like it's trying to fly away. They tilt their head back as the barber surgeon leans in with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. There's no numbing, no delay, just one quick brutal twist and a crack that silences the surrounding market for exactly half a second. Blood sprays. The victim screams. The crowd winces. Someone claps. It's a spectacle after all. Toothaches are common. With no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, and a diet built on gritty bread, sour ale, and questionable meat, everyone's teeth are rotting by age 20. Cavities aren't treated. They're endured until the infection becomes unbearable. Gums swell, faces puff up, and when the pain reaches a breaking point, out comes the tooth. Or at least part of it. It's not unusual for teeth to break mid-extraction, leaving jagged roots buried in the gum like medieval landmines. And then there's the risk of infection. No antibiotics, no clean bandages. If the wound festers, you don't recover. You die slowly, feverish and delirious, clutching your jaw like it's the source of all evil. Sometimes they bleed you to balance the humors. Sometimes they prescribe garlic, holy water, or prayers. Most of the time they just shrug and say, bad luck. There's no such thing as dental insurance. Just a coin in the barber's hand, a ruined jaw, and the applause of a crowd that's just thankful it wasn't them this time. The barber's day doesn't end with dental carnage. In fact, Pulling teeth is just one slice of his wildly diversified service package. He's also the town's go-to guy for haircuts, bloodletting, minor surgeries, wound cleaning, and, on special occasions, amputations. Welcome to the one-stop shop of medieval self-care, a shed that smells like boiled leather, dried blood, and the kind of sweat that haunts dreams. You walk in for a trim and immediately question your life choices. The floor is coated in sawdust, not for cleanliness but to soak up bodily fluids. There's no mirror, no waiting area, just a plank bench, a pile of crusty rags, and the faint sound of someone moaning behind a curtain. The barber greets you with a cheerful grunt and motions to the stool, still sticky from the last customer. You sit anyway, you have no choice. He begins with your hair, not styling, just hacking away at knots with shears that double as toe clippers. The cut is uneven, rushed, and absolutely unsanitary. You wince as the blade nicks your ear. He shrugs, spits, and keeps going. Want a shave? That'll be done with the same straight razor he used on a festering wound earlier. Hope you enjoy the thrill of potential blood poisoning with your new look. And then, the conversation begins. He talks while he works, loudly, about town gossip, your neighbor's infidelity, the baker's limp, and his cousin's rash that smells like mushrooms. You nod, lips tightly closed, trying not to inhale too deeply. He's eating something, maybe pickled onions, and chewing with the full power of someone who has nothing left to lose. The scent of garlic and old meat wafts over you in waves. You wonder if this is what dying smells like. Bloodletting is next if you're feeling off. He ties a rope around your arm, selects a spot with the precision of a dartboard player, and opens your vein with a knife that looks like it's been to war. The blood drips into a shallow bowl, while he assures you this will clear your melancholy and maybe fix your gout. You feel faint. He offers you ale. You drink it. You instantly regret it. When it's over, he slaps a dirty cloth on your wound and sends you on your way with a wink and a whistle. You step out into the street, hair butchered, blood dripping, and stomach churning from onion breath. You've never looked worse, and this is the best you're going to feel all week. It's midday, and you've earned a reward for your labor, your suffering, and the fact that you haven't collapsed in the street from infection or dehydration. That reward? Lunch. Except in a medieval town, lunch is less of a meal and more of a dare. There's no feast waiting at a long wooden table. There's a bowl. Maybe. And what's in that bowl is more of a suggestion than food. Most days, it's pottage, the stew that never dies. Not because it's immortal, but because no one ever fully empties the pot. They just keep adding to it. Cabbage, turnip, stale bread, last week's leftovers, a bone or two, some moss from the wall. No one knows when it started, no one remembers. It's a bubbling vat of edible possibility, and you eat it because the alternative is starvation. On a good day, you might find a chunk of meat. On a bad day, it might still have fur. Everyone gets their own wooden bowl. It hasn't been cleaned since the last festival. And no, there are no spoons. You drink, slurp, or scoop with fingers that earlier helped clean a chamber pot. There's no fire to reheat it, so it's lukewarm at best, and curiously gelatinous at worst. You swallow without thinking. That's the only way to get through it. Your side dish? A hunk of bread so dense it could be classified as a weapon. It's hard, dry, and possibly mixed with sawdust or powdered acorns to stretch the flour. You don't slice it, you gnaw it until your jaw locks. If you're lucky, it's not moldy. If you're really lucky, it only has a few rat nibbles on one corner. You take a bite, it crumbles into dust, and now you're choking on misery and crumbs. Refreshing. To wash it down, there's ale, weak, flat, but at least it's safer than the water, which could be carrying anything from cholera to God's wrath. The ale tastes like bread someone left in the sun too long, but it won't kill you immediately. Children drink it too. Everyone drinks it. No one's happy about it, but at least it's wet. So you sit in the sun, bowl in hand, flies buzzing around your face, pottage in your lap, chewing on bark masquerading as bread, and wondering how humanity survived this long. The answer, of course, is low expectations. You might think your home belongs to you, but in a medieval town, everything is shared, including your living quarters with the town's most determined freeloaders, rats. You don't keep them as pets. You don't keep them out. You just coexist, poorly. They skitter in the walls. They chew through your food. They nest in your bedding. They are residents in your home, and by medieval standards, they probably have more legal rights than you do. There's no rat poison, no traps, no pest control. The only line of defense is your reflexes and a very fast, very angry cat, if you're lucky enough to own one. Most of the time, the rats win. They're clever, they're quiet, and they're everywhere. You hear them at night, scratching, chewing, squealing. They sound like whispers in the dark, plotting something. Maybe they are. And they're not shy. You could be eating, praying, or sleeping, and one will dart across the floor like it pays rent. You could be mid-bite when one pokes its head out of the wall and stares at you. That moment of eye contact, it's a power move. You blink first, always. They get into everything. They chew holes in sacks of grain. They gnaw at wooden bowls. They climb into your cupboard, if you have one, and help themselves. They even nibble on sleeping children, because in the hierarchy of medieval hunger, rats are at the top. Babies? That's just bonus protein. Their droppings are everywhere. You find them in your shoes, in your bed, on your bread. You try to brush them away, but the scent lingers. A musky, sour stink that mixes perfectly with the mildew and human funk already embedded in your walls. You've stopped noticing the difference. Worst of all, they carry disease. Fleas ride them like tiny knights of the apocalypse, spreading plague wherever they go. You see a rat, and suddenly you're scratching. You find fleas on your ankles, in your bedding, in your scalp. You're never really clean, you're just between infestations. But no one talks about it. Because everyone has rats. Nobles have rats, priests have rats, kings have rats. It's not a failing, it's a fact. Rats are part of the landscape. The rats were here before you, they'll be here long after. So when you go to sleep tonight and hear the soft pitter-patter of claws behind the wall, don't panic, just remember, you're not alone, you never were. In theory, medieval people did laundry. In practice, laundry was an act of desperation, not hygiene. Clothes weren't changed daily. They were worn until they either rotted off your body or became stiff enough to walk away on their own. So when the day finally arrives to wash them, brace yourself. You're not about to get cleaner. You're about to make peace with filth in new and creative ways. Step 1. Fetch water. Easy, right? Except the nearest source is a river or communal well half a mile away, where the water is either already brown or suspiciously frothy from upstream activities, including bathing, butchering, or someone else doing their laundry badly. You fill a wooden bucket, carry it back, spilling half of it, and pray it doesn't already contain frog eggs. Step 2. Heat the water over a fire. This takes forever. Firewood is scarce, illegal to gather from certain forests, and when you finally get a flame going, the smoke smothers your face and your soul. You dump in lye or ashes, not soap, because that's reserved for nobility or people who think cleanliness is real. Your wash tub is a wooden bucket or an old cauldron with a hole plugged by clay. Then comes the scrubbing. Not with a machine, but with your knuckles and a washboard or a rock. Your wool tunic hasn't been washed in months and it resists the water like it's allergic to being clean. You beat it, twist it, curse it. The water turns gray, then brown, then something darker you'd rather not define. Fleas float to the surface like casualties. You don't feel cleaner. You feel violated. Drying your clothes means stringing them on a line in the open air, assuming it's not raining, freezing, or so humid they stay damp for eternity. Birds poop on them. Wind knocks them into the mud. A goat eats a sleeve. You rescue what you can, wring it out, and pretend you are satisfied. By the time you're done, your hands are raw, your back aches, and your tunic still smells like onions and barnyard. But at least it's damp filth now. Fresh filth. And for a few glorious hours you feel almost human, until you put it back on and the cycle begins again. Want to feel clean in a medieval town? Too bad. Bathing, once considered a sign of sophistication in ancient Rome, has fallen from grace like a nobleman in debt. Now it's suspicious, controversial, and even considered medically dangerous. People genuinely believe that water opens your pores and lets diseases creep in like ghosts through cracked walls. So the solution? Don't open the pores. Ever. Most folks bathe maybe a few times a year, not week, year. If you're wealthy, you might have a wooden tub dragged into your chamber and filled with buckets of heated water by servants who absolutely hate you. If you're poor, and you are, you're looking at rainwater barrels, freezing rivers, or nothing at all. The town has public bathhouses, but don't get excited. They're equal parts soap, scandal, and syphilis. For a few coins, you get hot water, a shared tub, and the company of strangers with varying levels of hygiene and an eagerness to gossip or grope. And just when the bathhouses start feeling popular, the church steps in. Too much nakedness, too much laughter, too much pleasure. Suddenly, bathing becomes immoral. Bathhouses close. Priests condemn them. Cleanliness starts smelling like sin, and no one wants to be caught squeaky during confession. Instead, people adopt creative strategies. They rub themselves with dry cloth. They air out their clothes. They sprinkle herbs under their arms. Some carry nosegays to cover the stink. Others just don't care. After all, if everyone smells like damp wool and meat sweat, then who's the odd one out? Nose blindness is real. You don't notice your own funk anymore. You are the funk. Even noble women rarely bathe. They change linen underclothes more often, believing the fabric absorbs the impurities. But guess what? Those linens don't get washed either. They just get rotated. Perfume and powders help, but nothing masks the fact that you're walking around in layers of scented decay. If you do manage to take a bath, it's an event, a miracle, a memory, one good scrub with water, and you feel like royalty briefly. Then the dirt creeps back, the lice regroup, and the town smells like itself again. Because in medieval life, being clean isn't normal. It's suspicious. Bathroom etiquette in a medieval town is, well, let's just say the standards are flexible. When nature calls, the answer is loud, public, and potentially deadly. Remember the chamber pots from earlier? They're still full. And emptying them involves opening the window, leaning out just far enough, and dumping the contents directly onto the street below. But this isn't done quietly. You must shout a warning, "Gardez-vous." It's Old French for "watch out below," which, let's be honest, most people don't. If you're fast, you'll hear the cry and dodge. If you're not, you'll get an unwanted gift from the second floor. being splashed with human waste is a legitimate occupational hazard in medieval urban life. Many locals simply accept it. Some carry wide hats for protection. Others just curse the sky and keep walking because what else can you do? For those who prefer to keep their waste a little more grounded, there's the back alley latrine. Usually a rotting bench over a shallow pit or trench. No privacy, no walls, just the sweet outdoors and whatever rat or neighbor decides to pass by. Want to hold your nose? Good luck. One whiff of this corner and your sinuses file for divorce. It smells like the afterlife. And not the good part. But the real danger isn't the smell, it's the leakage. When it rains, the pits overflow. The filth seeps into the walkways, the wells, even into people's homes if the street dips low. The town literally becomes a slalom course of waste runoff, turning every slope into a toxic water slide. To make it worse, some households keep chamber pots for days, allowing the contents to ferment into a smell strong enough to bend iron. People get used to it, or they die young, or both. It's not uncommon to hear kids playing in puddles beside one of these dumps, laughing as they splash through God knows what. It's not just gross, it's medieval gross. So the next time you step outside and hear "Gardy-loo," run, duck, hide, pray. Because in this town, waste management isn't a service. It's a shout and a splash. If the smell doesn't get you, the noise will. Medieval towns weren't just filthy, they were deafening. And no sound haunts your soul more than the church bells. They're not gentle chimes. They're iron monsters, swung with force and fury, crashing out the hour like it's announcing the apocalypse every 15 minutes. The first clang is startling. The second is painful. By the third, you're questioning your faith and your hearing. The bells ring for prayer, for danger, for death, for weddings, for saints, for storms, for sermons. And sometimes it seems just because the bell ringer is bored. The noise echoes down narrow alleys, through stone walls, and into your bones. It doesn't just mark time, it attacks it. And it's not alone. Chanting follows. Monks or priests raise their voices in low, solemn tones that bounce between stone chapels like divine drones. These chants aren't calming. They sound like a funeral crossed with a thunderstorm inside a barrel. Add the murmured Latin of the illiterate masses mimicking what they've never read, and you have a spiritual cacophony fit for a holy breakdown. Religious festivals are even worse. Trumpets blare, drums thud, choirs shriek, processions march through town with sacred relics, and a mob of barefoot penitents wailing for mercy. It's a spiritual rave. No one's sober, everyone's sweating, and the noise level could frighten a saint. And the irony? All this is supposed to bring peace, quiet reflection, inner stillness. But there's no room for that when the bell tower is actively assaulting your face. You can't think, you can't nap, and you definitely can't escape the soundtrack of divine obligation. Even in the dead of night, the bells toll for the souls of the departed. It's dark, it's quiet, and then clang. Someone died, you don't know who. You just know you're awake again, ears ringing and bladder twitching. The town sleeps, but the bells never do. So, whether you're rich or poor, devout or indifferent, one thing is certain. In a medieval town, God might be merciful, but his bells are merciless. If medieval life teaches you anything, it's this: never trust a smile. Because behind every grin is a battlefield of decay, infection, and breath that could drop a horse at 10 paces. Tooth care in a medieval town doesn't exist, not really. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, and no knowledge of what causes cavities. People chew on sticks. They rinse with wine or vinegar. They say prayers. They bleed. and then their teeth rot anyway. By the time you're in your 20s, your gums are swollen, your molars have turned black, and your breath smells like composted garlic and regret. Nobody's exempt. Rich or poor, you're gnawing through gritty bread, drinking acidic ale, and grinding your teeth at night from pain and stress. Literally. Your enamel doesn't stand a chance. A lifetime of chewing through mystery meat, burnt crusts, and old barley will grind your teeth down to medieval nubs. Toothaches are a way of life. They throb constantly, like background music made of suffering. Some folks wrap their heads in cloth to muffle the agony. Others just scream into their pillow and hope for a quick death. There's no relief, no dentist, no Novocaine, just your friendly local barber with pliers and poor aim. But the worst part? The smell. Bad breath isn't just common, it's cultural. Everyone has it. Nobody escapes it. Morning breath is permanent. Kissing is rare. Speaking closely is a form of psychological warfare. Some people carry cloves or herbs in their mouths just to cover the stench, but it doesn't help. The rot always wins. If your tooth gets infected, you're in real danger. There are no antibiotics. The infection spreads fast. It creeps into your jaw, your throat, your bloodstream. You could lose your tongue, or your life. Yes, a tooth can kill you. In the Middle Ages, that's not an exaggeration. That's a Tuesday. People used to think tooth pain was caused by tooth worms, tiny creatures living in the enamel, eating their way through your molars like termites in a timber house. They weren't far off. The real worms just happened to be invisible bacteria, and the damage they caused was just as terrifying. So when someone smiles at you in a medieval town, don't smile back. Brace yourself. You're about to get a whiff of something ancient, fermented, and entirely unforgettable. If you thought violence in a medieval town was reserved for battlefields and bar brawls, think again. Some of the loudest, most vicious fights break out in the most sacred of places, the bakery line. Bread is life, bread is currency, bread is survival, but bread is also in short supply. So when supplies run low, or the bread's especially moldy, or a rat's taken a nibble, chaos reigns. You queue up outside the town's bakery before sunrise, stomach growling, surrounded by 50 other people with the same idea. There's no guarantee of fairness, no rationing system. It's first come, first served, unless someone richer or pushier decides otherwise. And you wait and wait and wait. The smell of baking bread teases your nose. It's intoxicating. It smells like hope until the shouting starts. Someone cuts the line. A merchant tries to buy extra loaves for his family. A widow accuses a child of theft. The baker slams the wooden counter and shouts for order, his flour-covered face red with fury. But the people don't back down. This is personal. This is primal. You shove, you snarl, you wave your coin pouch like a weapon. The woman behind you steps on your foot. The man ahead of you elbows your ribs. Someone drops a loaf, and 5 hands dive for it like it's made of gold. The bread itself, coarse, hard, and slightly sour. It's made from barley, rye, or whatever flour the miller could grind this week. Sometimes it's padded with sawdust or acorns to stretch it. Sometimes it's green around the edges. You scrape off the mold and eat it anyway, because there's nothing else. Prices change daily. The baker may raise them arbitrarily, citing grain shortages, bad weather, or royal taxes. If you can't pay, you go hungry, or worse, you steal. And stealing bread, that's serious. You could lose a hand, or be publicly flogged, or be shamed in front of the town with a sign around your neck reading "thief" while children throw cabbage at your face. But despite the noise, the anger, the filth, bread is sacred. It binds the town together in one furious, desperate ritual. People scream, they cry, they bleed, but they get their bread. And then they come back tomorrow to do it all again. There's a certain thrill to living in a medieval town, and it usually comes from above. Because even if you manage to dodge the daily dumpings from windows and navigate the sludge-soaked streets, the weather can turn an inconvenience into a full-blown catastrophe. Windy days are the worst. Windy nights? That's a medieval nightmare with a splash zone. Chamber pots, those glorified buckets of horror, aren't sealed. They're not designed for stability. And when the wind howls through narrow alleys, it doesn't just rattle shutters and scatter straw. It lifts lids, it tilts buckets. It carries airborne droplets of disaster across courtyards, into homes, and occasionally directly into someone's soup. You're walking home with your head down, trying to stay out of trouble, when a gust barrels down the street like a drunk horse. From 3 floors up, a window slams open. A chamber pot tips. Gravity and fate take over. No warning this time. No shout of "Gardy-loo!" Just a sudden splash, a scream, and the realization that you've been baptized in your neighbor's digestive history. Even when they do shout, the wind steals their voice. All you hear is a muffled "Gar" before the deluge hits. It could be water, it could be worse. Spoiler, it's worse. The wind turns courtyards into minefields. It knocks over privy screens. It flings rags. It kicks up the dust from dried refuse and turns it into an airborne seasoning that sticks to your skin, your teeth, your soul. People walk faster on windy days, cloaks pulled tight, eyes scanning the windows above like hunted animals. No one feels safe. Some try to secure their chamber pots with stones or rope. Others just empty them early and pray. But even empty pots can turn into blunt projectiles when hurled from a 3rd-story windowsill by a gust strong enough to rattle bones. Injuries aren't uncommon. A dented skull here, a broken nose there. Town life is a gamble. Wind just raises the stakes. You wipe your face. You look up in disbelief. And somewhere, someone's laughing. Because in a medieval town, weather isn't just bad luck, it's weaponized hygiene. Let's talk about infrastructure. Actually, let's talk about the lack of it, because in a medieval town, sewage isn't managed, it's survived. There are no pipes, no drainage grates, no underground tunnels to whisk away the foulness of daily life. There's just the street, the ditch, and the hope that gravity will do its thing before your house floods with filth. Everything ends up in the road. Chamber pots, butcher's waste, laundry water, vomit, dead animals, and things you'd rather not describe. They're all tossed into the gutter, which runs straight through the middle of town like a vein of human suffering. On dry days, it bakes. On wet days, it flows. And on most days, it just sits, bubbling, fermenting, and inviting flies like it's throwing a banquet. People step over it. Children fall into it. Dogs drink from it. And yes, sometimes someone slips, lands face first, and becomes the latest cautionary tale told between bites of moldy bread. The town doesn't fix it. It can't fix it. There's no plan. There's no money. The most you'll get is a wooden plank thrown over the worst part, if someone's feeling generous. And don't think the problem stops at the surface. Waste seeps down into the earth, contaminating wells and groundwater. People drink it anyway. Why? Because it's there. Because it looks clean enough. Because boiling water takes time and firewood, and both are luxuries. So people sip sickness every day and call it hydration. If they get sick, they blame demons or sin. Never the actual poop river running past their door. Rain is both blessing and curse. It clears the filth, but only temporarily. The runoff carries it downhill, often into the homes of the unlucky. Basements flood, cellars turn septic, streets turn into squelching horror trails where every footstep sounds like a wet apology. But again, no one fixes it. They just wait. Wait for it to dry. Wait for it to fade. Wait for someone else to step in it first. In a medieval town, there is no sewage system. There is only hope, prayer, and very high boots. As the sun begins to set over the medieval town, you might hope that the day's smells would calm down, that the heat would ease, and the air might clear. But that would be the mistake of someone who doesn't understand fermentation. Evening doesn't bring relief. It brings accumulation, and the stink that's been stewing in silence all day finally decides to show up and introduce itself. As shadows lengthen, the narrow streets trap the heat. The layers of filth, animal waste, food scraps, bodily fluids, start releasing their final gift to the world: steam. The alleys don't cool down, they sweat. The smell thickens into a fog that wraps around your throat and crawls into your lungs like it's hunting for real estate. The day's spilled beer, spoiled fish, and sun-ripened offal now mix into a bouquet that could strip paint. The butchers are done, but the blood's still drying. The bakers are cleaning up by sweeping crumbs into the gutter. Rats are out in full force, tail deep in everything you hoped no one would touch. The tanner's shop is still leaking stink down the slope, and someone left a bucket of sheep's milk out since noon. You know because it found your foot. And then, of course, there's the alehouse. The tavern doors swing open, and out wafts a mix of sweat, spilled drink, singed hair, and a hint of whatever the guy in the corner just vomited. The drunkards pour into the street, belching loudly, arguing about pigs or wives or both. One of them pees against a wall. Another collapses onto a pile of something not quite straw. Add to that the smells from inside homes: old stew reheated for the third time, burning cabbage, damp wool drying near the fire, and you've got an olfactory apocalypse drifting over the town like a wet cloak. This is not a scent you escape. It clings to your hair, your clothes, your hope. Even the wind gives up. It carries the stench a few feet, then dies with a whimper. The sky darkens, but the smell grows louder until you can almost hear it whispering, "You live here now." This is evening in a medieval town. Not golden light and peaceful stillness, just rotting meat, ale-soaked arguments, and the warm, wet kiss of fermentation wrapping around your soul. The medieval town isn't just a place of labor and suffering. It's a thriving gossip cauldron, bubbling over with rumors, scandals, and spite. But unlike modern gossip whispered over texts or coffee, here it's delivered face-to-face, in close quarters, with weaponized breath. Imagine two neighbors leaning over a fence, trading juicy details about whose cow gave birth in the priest's herb garden, while exhaling a miasma of garlic, sour beer, and unbrushed teeth. They speak in hushed tones, then shout when the mood strikes, spitting breadcrumbs mid-conspiracy. You can't hear the gossip without inhaling it. Every sentence is punctuated by a burp or a cough or the soft wheeze of someone still recovering from last week's bad bread. The stories are wild, some true, some invented on the spot. Did you hear Agnes hasn't been to church in a week? I saw Thomas touch the widow's apron. The blacksmith's apprentice has fleas again, and not just on his head. No one is safe. Even the local priest is fair game, especially the priest. The more pious they seem, the juicier the gossip gets. People gather around water barrels, wells, ovens, and anywhere else that offers a good backdrop for judging others. And they lean in close. Too close. Medieval personal space is non-existent. You get an inch from a mouth that hasn't seen mint in months, and that's how you learn the town's secrets, and possibly catch something. Sometimes gossip spreads faster than the actual truth. A cough becomes plague, a limp becomes a curse, a missing chicken becomes witchcraft. And once your name's in someone's mouth, it's in everyone's ears. Reputation is fragile, and the more interesting your downfall sounds, the faster it travels. Yet everyone participates. Gossip is a survival tactic. Knowing who's sick, who's cheating, who's hiding food, it's all essential intel. In a town with no newspapers, this is the evening broadcast. Equal parts entertainment and social defense mechanism. So, if someone starts talking and you smell beer breath and boiled onions coming your way, brace yourself. You're about to learn something you wish you hadn't, and you'll need a cloth for both your nose and your conscience. As evening settles, the town doesn't quiet down. It unleashes. By now, most of the humans are indoors, their voices muffled behind warped wooden walls. But the streets are far from silent. That's because the night belongs to the animals, loud, unruly, and determined to make sure no one sleeps peacefully. If the day was ruled by chaos, the night is ruled by barking chaos with fleas. First, the dogs. Packs of strays roam the alleys like they own the place, and they kind of do. No collars, no leashes, just scars, growls, and the kind of desperate hunger that makes a boot look like dinner. They fight over bones, they chase rats, they howl at things that may or may not be there. Their barking echoes through the empty market stalls, bouncing off walls and waking babies who immediately begin a screaming duet. Then come the goats. During the day, they're somewhat manageable. Tied up, milked, herded around by grumpy children. But at night, they scream. Yes, scream. Not bleat, not baa, scream. As if they're reliving every indignity they've suffered in one long, drawn-out note of pure existential horror. They shriek from rooftops, from barn corners, from right outside your window like little furry banshees with hooves. And they're not alone. Chickens flutter around in panicked circles, upset by the wind or a particularly loud fart. Pigs snort and root around garbage heaps, overturning barrels and grunting with the enthusiasm of drunkards. A cow breaks loose and stares blankly at your door until someone shoos it with a broom. Cats screech during mating fights, which sound less like romance and more like a demon crawling through bagpipes. Add to this the flutter of bats, the buzz of giant mosquitoes, the scurrying of rats, and the occasional hoofbeat of a merchant's mule still trying to find its owner, and you've got the nocturnal animal symphony in G for gag reflex. There are no animal shelters, no fences, no midnight animal control. These creatures go where they want, do what they want, and fill the night with a soundtrack of shrill, unending life. You pull your blanket tighter, pray they don't find a way inside, and try not to imagine what the goats are so upset about. Spoiler, it's everything. Night has fully arrived, and with it comes darkness that's truly dark. There are no streetlights, no steady glow from homes, just flickers of firelight, lanterns, torches, and oil lamps, casting more shadows than safety. Medieval night is not quiet, it's not peaceful, it's predatory, and you can feel it breathing. The lanterns sway on iron hooks or hang from crooked doorposts, their dim light barely holding back the black. Flames gutter with every breeze, threatening to plunge the street into blindness at any moment. Shadows stretch and dance, distorting shapes into twisted horrors. Is that a log, or someone waiting in the dark with a club? You won't know until it's too late. Rats own the night. They scurry along beams, dart between feet, and chew noisily through anything not nailed down. You spot one near your food sack, slap it away, and another takes its place. They're so comfortable they don't run anymore. They pause to stare, whiskers twitching, as if daring you to stop them. The town's alleys are worst. Pools of old rainwater reflect torchlight in distorted shapes, and footsteps echo in ways that make every corner sound occupied. You walk faster. The shadows walk with you. You hear a squeal, not human, but close. A cat chases something, and the silence that follows is far too sudden. Most villagers won't venture far from home at night unless they have to. But when they do, they carry lanterns, clubs, and prayers. Not just for bandits, but for what lives in the dark, the kind of things people whisper about but never describe. Folklore is born in this darkness. So are missing persons. Inside, you light a candle and hope it lasts. The walls creak. The wind moans through a crack in the door. The firewood pops, sounding for all the world like something creeping closer. You huddle under your blanket, knowing the rats are watching. And outside, someone's lantern just went out. Medieval towns don't sleep, they simmer. And at night, the shadows always win. Morning in the square is for trading. Afternoon is for gossip. Evening? That's when the real entertainment begins. Because in a medieval town, nothing draws a crowd like public punishment. Forget theater, forget storytelling, forget music. This is the community's favorite pastime. Pain, live, and in color. The square transforms into a performance space with a splash of dread. A wooden platform is erected, or maybe it's always there, stained and splintered from past use. Guards drag out the condemned, thieves, heretics, drunkards, blasphemers, or just someone who insulted the wrong noble's hat. The crowd gathers, not out of outrage or protest, but anticipation. Parents bring children. Merchants take a break from hawking to grab a front row spot. You? You're just hoping the executioner isn't drunk again. First come the fines and floggings. A man is tied to a post, back bare, and whipped until his spine sings. Every crack of the whip draws a cheer, a gasp, or both. Blood spatters the wood. Someone jokes about his sins. Another tosses a turnip, either in protest or support, it's hard to tell. Either way, it hits. Next up might be the stocks, where petty offenders get locked in by head and hands to serve as town decorations for a few days. They're spat on, mocked, slapped, and occasionally gifted with a rotten apple to the face. Don't laugh too loudly, though. Next week, it could be you, for something as minor as stealing a loaf or skipping church. Then there are the executions, saved for big days or important messages. Beheading? That's for nobles. Hanging? For everyone else. A gallows is set up. The rope creaks. The crowd leans in. The condemned says something defiant. The trapdoor falls. No applause, but plenty of murmurs and whispers as the body swings gently above a muddy square. Sometimes it's even worse. Branding, mutilation, ear removal, tongue piercings. Not the fun kind. The punishment is a message, a warning, and a spectacle. And the crowd, they're hungry for it. Not just because justice matters, but because nothing else breaks the boredom quite like someone losing a body part in public. By sunset, the square is splattered, the executioner is tired, and the town heads home buzzing with fresh gossip and the knowledge that they're not that guy. Not today. After the execution, after the bells, after the screaming goats, there's only one place left to go, the tavern. A medieval tavern isn't the cozy, candlelit haven from fantasy books. It's not a warm welcome. It's a boiling cauldron of humanity, and it smells like it. Step inside and your nose is immediately assaulted by a dozen aromas, none of them good. Sweat, ale, vomit, smoke, soggy straw on the floor, and the faintest hint of something dead under the floorboards. People are already shouting. A man's singing. Badly. Another's arm wrestling a woman twice his size, and he's losing. Two drunks are dancing or fighting. It's unclear. You make your way to the bar, slipping on something sticky that might be beer or blood. The innkeeper doesn't smile. He grunts. You slap down a coin, and he slides over a tankard of ale that looks like it's been strained through a shoe. You drink it anyway, because in this place, that's the cleanest thing you'll touch tonight. Tables are packed with peasants and tradesmen, all shouting over one another in thick dialects. Someone's passed out in the corner. Someone else is trying to light a pipe with a candle while his beard starts smoldering. Laughter erupts, not at the jokes, but at the accidents. Fights are common. An argument over a spilled drink turns into a shove. A shove becomes a punch. A punch turns into a tavern-wide brawl where stools fly, mugs shatter, and the musician in the corner doesn't stop playing because this is the most exciting thing that's happened all month. The food? Don't ask. It's probably pottage, it's probably old, it's definitely been dropped on the floor and reheated. You eat it anyway because your stomach's not picky anymore. It gave up standards 2 plagues ago. And yet, somehow, this is where people relax. This is where they laugh, drink, flirt, sing, and forget the lice, the rats, the rope burns, and the taxes. It's loud, filthy, dangerous, and barely lit, but it's alive. And in a world where death lurks outside every door, a bad ale and a broken nose feel like the best night you've had in weeks. In the medieval town, water isn't your friend. It might look clear, but it's lying to you. That river, trickling peacefully through the village? Upstream, someone just dumped the contents of their chamber pot into it. Possibly a dead pig, too, maybe a few. So instead of sipping a cool glass of H2O, you drink ale. Yes, beer for breakfast, and lunch and dinner. Even the kids drink it, especially the kids. They don't have a choice either. But before you picture roaring taverns and frothy mugs, adjust your expectations. This isn't craft brewed IPA with citrus notes and a quirky name. It's small beer, a weak, slightly sour liquid with low alcohol and even lower appeal. It's made from barley, maybe oats, boiled just long enough to kill the death inside, then cooled in barrels that haven't been cleaned since the last famine. You drink it warm, flat, and with floaty bits that no one talks about. Still, it won't kill you, which is more than can be said for the local water. That water, it's alive in all the wrong ways. Parasites, waste, algae, and the occasional chunky surprise. Drink it straight, and you're rolling the dice with dysentery, typhoid, or a polite death by dehydration as your body rejects everything that comes in. Even the rich aren't immune. They may get wine, if they're lucky or political, but many still rely on beer because even royal wells sometimes taste like boiled socks. If you're especially desperate, you might filter water through a cloth and pray hard. Most people don't bother. They just drink and burp their way through the day. And let's be honest, the beer isn't just hydration, it's coping. Life is miserable, loud, dirty, and itchy. A warm mug of weak ale in the morning doesn't fix any of that, but it numbs the edges just enough to get you out the door. It keeps your guts from collapsing and your nerves from noticing the rat chewing through your grain sack. So when you raise your mug in the morning, don't toast to joy. Toast to not dying from the well. Cheers, peasant. If sound could rot, medieval town life would be a compost heap of noise. It's not just that everything is loud, it's that everything is badly loud. The banging of hammers, the barking of dogs, the belching of drunks, and the clanging of church bells already build a daily soundtrack of chaos. But then someone adds music, and that's when things truly fall apart. At any hour of the day or night you might encounter a bard. Sometimes a traveling minstrel, sometimes just a bored drunk with a lute and questionable rhythm. He strums, he sings, he howls lyrics about love, death, bread, or lost pigs. His voice cracks, his strings are loose, and his instrument smells like it's been stored in a dung heap, which, to be fair, it probably has. The songs aren't good, they're repetitive, off-key, and half-forgotten. But everyone sings along anyway. Why? Because misery needs a chorus. You haven't bathed in weeks. You're itchy, underfed, and 2 missed meals away from praying for plague. Singing loud and off-key with a belly full of beer is the closest thing you'll get to joy. In taverns, the songs get rowdy. In the street, they get mournful. In church, they get haunting. But one thing they never get is tuned. There are flutes that squeal like tortured birds, fiddles that screech like angry cats, and drums beaten with so much rage you wonder if they're possessed. Music is everywhere, and somehow it makes things worse. Because now the rats are panicking, the babies are wailing to match pitch, and the livestock are reacting with a chorus of their own. A goat screams. A rooster adds backup vocals. A donkey begins a solo that will haunt your dreams. And yet, the music continues. It echoes through the alleys, under doorways, through every crack in every wall. It's relentless. It's inescapable. And after a while, it becomes comforting. Like a terrible lullaby that tells you, yes, life is awful, but at least you're not singing alone. You might think love in a medieval town would be poetic. Moody glances, stolen kisses, moonlight through wooden shutters. But no, romance here is raw, accidental, and slightly fermented. It's less Shakespeare and more, please don't sneeze on me. Let's start with courtship. There's no dating, no long walks by the stream. There's livestock trading, arranged marriages, or fleeting eye contact during pottage distribution. If someone likes you, they stare. A lot. Maybe they hand you a slightly less moldy piece of bread. Maybe they don't wipe their nose before talking to you. This is medieval flirting. You smell each other before you speak. That's not a metaphor, it's survival. You can tell how long it's been since their last bath, read, splash with cold water, how many onions they've eaten, and whether they've been wrestling pigs or just walking near them. If you can stand next to someone without gagging, that's love. Actual affection? It happens somehow. Despite the lice, the breath, the open sores, and the communal living. You sneak a smile through the marketplace. Maybe your hands touch while reaching for the same rat-free loaf. Maybe your families approve. Or maybe you risk getting whipped for it. Either way, romance must compete with mud, disease, and the constant presence of your extended family sleeping 2 feet away. Privacy is a myth. You sleep with your entire household, plus animals, in one room. If you're married, you whisper sweet nothings while your uncle snores and the goat chews hay in the corner. If you're sneaking around, good luck. Floors creak, people gossip, and your chance of getting caught by someone's angry father or the local priest is about 100%. There's also the risk of pregnancy, which is less miracle of life and more hope you don't die giving birth on a pile of straw next to the fireplace. Still, people fall in love, or at least into mutual tolerance. They give each other charms. They carve initials into fences. They share crusts of bread and lice. And in this world, that's as tender as it gets. There's a special kind of terror that comes at midnight in a medieval town. Not from ghosts or bandits, but from the bladder. Because when nature calls in the dead of night, the response is a sad, desperate shuffle across uneven, freezing ground to one of the worst places on earth, the backyard latrine, or worse, the corner bucket. You wake up in a sweat, not from nightmares but because your body has betrayed you. It's pitch dark, you can't see, you can barely move. But you know what waits. Either the reeking wooden bench outside the back door, slick with dew and danger, or the family's night pot, which by now is probably full, or overflowing. Option 1. You fumble for a cloak, slip on something suspicious on the floor, dodge your sleeping relatives, step over the dog, avoid the fire pit, unlatch the door without waking the baby, and stumble into the freezing night. Your teeth chatter, your bare feet freeze, and the moment you sit on that icy plank, a rat squeals from underneath. Surprise! Option 2, the corner pot. It's close, but it's disgusting. The stench has colonized the room. It's not just a smell, it's a presence. You crouch, try to aim, and pray no one wakes up while you're mid-squirt. The sound echoes, the shame does too. You hope no one asks in the morning who didn't empty it. And then there's the dumping. Someone has to empty that pot eventually. It's always a fight. No one wants the job. You draw straws. You barter. You fake a limp. When you lose, you carry that sloshing nightmare through the door, into the street, and pray your hand doesn't slip. The splash radius. Biblical. Sometimes you're not even awake. You're half-conscious, stumbling and mumbling in the dark, just trying not to trip over a chicken. And if it's raining, you slip, you slide. You add to the puddle you meant to avoid. So, yes, in medieval life, the worst part of the night isn't monsters. It's the cold, the stink, and the urgent need to pee with dignity you simply do not possess. In a medieval town, even God's house smells like sin. The church may be the spiritual heart of the community, but it's also a confined box of smells that sticks to your cloak long after the sermon ends. You walk in hoping for holy peace and walk out wondering if incense can die from overuse. Let's start with the incense. It's supposed to cleanse the space, elevate the senses, connect the soul to the divine. But when it mixes with stale sweat, moldy robes, and centuries of candle soot, it creates something truly unholy. It hangs in the air like spiritual smog, clogging your throat and stinging your eyes. The priests love it. Everyone else just coughs quietly and pretends they're moved by the Spirit. Then there's the people. Packed pews, layers of wool, unwashed bodies kneeling shoulder to shoulder. You're pressed against someone who smells like fermented onions and another who smells like fear and cheese. And you're stuck, because leaving early is a sin, and sin smells even worse in here. The altar smells too, not just of wax and wine, but of blood. Sacrifices, relics, and holy remnants stored in musty drawers behind velvet curtains. Someone once left a martyred toe on display for 3 months. The pilgrims loved it. The smell. Less so. Let's not forget the candles. Tallow, not beeswax, which means they're made from animal fat, cheap, greasy, and smoky. The air fills with the scent of half-rendered goat mixed with holy hymns. And those candles are everywhere, lit for prayers, lit for penance, lit because it's dark and no one wants to trip over the font and fall into baptism by accident. On high holy days, the church gets extra full. More bodies, more smells, more heat. People faint from the stench. The priest blames the devil. The choir keeps singing through the fog of garlic and ash. You clutch your wooden cross and breathe shallowly. This is your sacred space. It's not sterile. It's not serene. It's sticky, smoky, and stuffed with the scent of salvation gone sour. You pray for forgiveness, but mostly you pray for fresh air. If you've ever thought of medieval music as soft, lilting, and angelic, you're wrong. In the echoing stone halls of a medieval town, music is less about harmony and more about haunting. It follows you, it surrounds you, and it's never quite in tune. Let's start with the choir. Monks and nuns chanting in Latin, their voices rising and falling like funeral bells. The acoustics in churches are so echo-heavy that even a sneeze becomes a symphony. Now, imagine 15 monks chanting in monotone, echoing through stone like a summoning ritual. It doesn't soothe, it lingers, it gets into your skull and vibrates. The instruments don't help. There are viols, medieval violins, rebecks and flutes that sound like a goose being strangled. If you're lucky, you might get a harpist, but only if the town can afford one who isn't missing fingers. Most music is made on borrowed or handmade instruments, strung with gut and tuned by hope. Nothing quite matches pitch, and every note is accompanied by a squeak, scrape, or cough. At funerals, the dirges are so sad they could ruin a wedding. At weddings, the songs are so tense they sound like someone's already planning the divorce. And on feast days, you get a town band, a group of drunks with drums and horns who have decided that volume equals celebration. They're not wrong. You just wish they were further away. In homes, people sing to themselves, quietly, off-key, a lullaby to a baby, a work tune in the field, a drunken verse after dinner. No one's good, but no one cares. Singing is for surviving, for remembering, for pretending that your life isn't just a mud-drenched loop of sweat, fleas, and gruel. But the worst part? The night music. The wind carries it. A broken flute played 3 houses down. A monk's chant echoing down the valley. A widow humming alone. It's eerie, it's ancient. It slips through cracks like a draft. And even when the music stops, the silence that follows somehow sounds like it's still playing. In the medieval world, you don't just hear music, you live with it. Bad notes and all. Midnight comes and goes, but rest in a medieval town is a luxury no one really earns. Because even if you manage to fall asleep despite the goats, the rats, and the neighbors' haunting flatulence, something will always drag you back into consciousness. And it's usually something on fire. Fires are a regular feature of medieval life. Homes are built from timber, thatch, and the kind of dreams that ignite if you stare at them too hard. Chimneys are either crude or non-existent. Hearths stay smoldering all night, and candles are left burning near tapestries because no one wants to walk into their own wall in the dark. It only takes one ember, one careless elbow, or one drunk falling asleep near the fire to turn a street into a bonfire. And when something catches, the whole town knows. Shouts fill the night. Bells ring, again. People pour into the streets half-dressed, throwing water, mud, ale, anything, onto the flames. Buckets form chains, chaos erupts, and someone always screams, "Witch!" even if it was clearly just a cooking accident. If it's not fire, it's fighting. The tavern may have technically closed hours ago, but the brawls are still going. Someone stumbles into your fence. Someone else tries to ride your goat. Punches are thrown, teeth are lost. Sometimes it's a duel with blunt knives over spilled stew. Other times, it's 2 brothers arguing over who gets the last rat tail. In any case, you're awake again, hiding behind a shutter while someone gets hit with a stool. By the time the sun rises, the town smells like smoke, sweat, and yesterday's violence. You're exhausted. You've slept maybe 2 hours. The rooster crows again. Someone's already screaming about stolen eggs. And your neighbor's shed? Gone. Just ashes and a confused chicken standing where a wall used to be. You drag yourself out of bed, scratch your bites, and mentally prepare to do it all over again. Because in the medieval town, there are no restful nights, just breaks between emergencies. In the grand perfume counter of medieval life, the rich smell slightly better, but not by much. Their stink is just fancier. In a town teeming with filth, it's easy to imagine that nobles live in soap-scented palaces. Spoiler, they don't. They just have more expensive ways to cover the same old rot. Let's start with their homes. Larger, sure, but still built of stone and wood with smoke-stained walls and unwashed tapestries that trap generations of dust, sweat, and animal funk. Instead of sleeping beside pigs, they sleep beside furs. But guess what? Those furs are crawling with fleas too. Luxury just means the fleas are warmer. Their solution to the stench: perfume, powders, flowers stuffed into sleeves. Nobles carry pomanders, little balls of scented herbs, on chains to sniff when peasants get too close. But beneath the rosewater and lavender, their breath still reeks of old meat and wine. Their clothes may be velvet, but they're rarely washed. They use linen underlayers to absorb the badness, then change them out. Because obviously the problem isn't bathing, it's bad fabric. And yes, they bathe more often than peasants, but that might mean once a month instead of once a season. If you're rich, you soak in a tub of tepid water, poured by servants who definitely judge you silently. You sprinkle in herbs, maybe even milk, and pretend that doesn't attract every fly in the province. Then you step out, towel off with scratchy cloth, and go back to sweating in 3 layers of brocade. Meanwhile, the poor wash in rivers. When they can, which means nobles look down on them not just socially, but olfactorily. The rich sniff. They wrinkle their noses. They mutter about the lower class smell, while ignoring the fact that they themselves smell like mutton stew soaked into upholstery. So when the classes mix, at market, at church, or during an angry mob uprising, everyone smells terrible, just in different styles. The peasants reek of survival, the nobles of pretense. But when it rains, and everyone's wool soaks through, you can't tell who's rich and who's just rotting faster. At first glance, a medieval festival looks like a moment of joy, a rare day off, a celebration, a public feast. But if you take a deeper sniff, and you will, you'll find these events are filth and party hats. A festival isn't a break from suffering. It's just suffering with music, fire, and extra meat grease. Preparations begin early. The pigs are slaughtered. The carts roll in with barrels of ale. Bunting is strung between rooftops using twine that smells like feet. Townsfolk gather, dressed in their least stained tunics, ready to forget that life is a long series of damp mornings and infected splinters. They cheer, they sing, they dance on muddy ground, already littered with chicken bones and drunken regrets. The food is laid out on tables that haven't seen a scrub since the last plague. Roasted meats drip fat onto wooden platters swarming with flies. Boiled cabbage releases waves of odor that rival battlefield aftermath. And the cheese? Aged to perfection, or possibly past perfection. No one's sure anymore. Games begin. Wrestling matches in the mud, archery contests with arrows that bend, and pig chases through the town square. Children run screaming, not from joy, but because someone threw a dead eel at them for luck. Somewhere, a man tries to juggle while hiccuping through a beer belch. Everyone claps. No one asks questions. Then there's the drinking. Ale flows like a river of regret. People cheer and stumble. Some weep openly for reasons no one remembers. A woman climbs onto a barrel and starts singing about a saint and a goat. The goat joins in. Or maybe it's just screaming again. By nightfall, the square is a war zone of joy and excrement. People pass out in hay piles. Vomit stains every corner. A bonfire rages, and someone throws a cursed object into it for good luck. Arguments break out over spilled stew and old grudges. There's laughter, there's blood, there's someone asleep in the stocks with a smile. Yes, festivals are fun, but they leave the town twice as filthy, the rats twice as bold, and your boots permanently sticky. You'll remember the dancing, you'll remember the laughter, but mostly you'll remember the smell. Morning after a festival, or any normal day really, proves one unshakable truth. This town is permanently filthy. Not temporarily, not seasonally, not only after parties. It's a constant, low-level environmental crisis made of dirt, grease, and decisions people stopped making centuries ago. The streets are coated in grime so thick it might qualify as a new layer of soil. Nothing stays clean. If you sweep the floor, the dirt rises in clouds like it's protesting. If you wash your shirt, the wind blows ash on it within minutes. If you step outside in bare feet, you re-enter the house with 3 different kinds of manure stuck between your toes, and possibly a live tick. The walls of buildings are streaked with soot. The roofs are mossy, damp, and home to whatever birds didn't get eaten last winter. Wells are surrounded by brown puddles that buzz with fly activity. Even the air feels used. Not fresh or crisp, just old. Like it's been chewed and exhaled by too many generations. People don't even try anymore. Children play in dirt piles. Adults wear their clothes until they turn stiff. Hair gets washed once a season, maybe. You can tell how long it's been based on whether their lice have moved to the eyebrows. And no one has ever seen a white cloth stay white. It always becomes beige, then brown, then part of the compost heap. The filth creeps into your soul. You stop noticing it, you stop complaining. Your skin develops a permanent sheen, equal parts sweat and soot. You scratch without thinking. You sniff the air only when absolutely necessary. And when someone walks past with even the faintest smell of mint or lavender, you stare, suspiciously. And yet, life continues. Markets bustle. Marriages happen. People give birth in rooms that smell like soup and goat feet. This is normal. This is routine. This is the medieval town. And it never, ever gets clean. At the end of a medieval day with your bones aching and your hair housing a thriving flea metropolis, you finally stumble to your straw bed expecting relief. But in this town, sleep is optional and not your decision. First, there's the bed itself, or rather, the slightly flattened pile of straw, mites, and hay scraps that might have once been part of a mattress. You lie down. It crinkles. It stabs. It smells like barn dust and your cousin's feet. Your blanket is a damp wool sheet that hasn't been properly dried since the last festival. You curl up, scratch your legs, and try to find a spot that doesn't poke you in the kidney. Now, listen. The town may look asleep, but it's not. Just outside your shutterless window, the goats are screaming again. A dog barks every 3 minutes like clockwork. Someone's arguing with their spouse in full voice. A baby 2 cottages down has colic, or demons, it's hard to say. A drunk stumbles through the alley, singing about turnips and vomits near your door. You sigh, you adjust, you itch. Then come the noises from inside, your sibling grinding their teeth, your grandmother muttering half-prayers in her sleep, someone's stomach rumbling, someone else passes gas with the fury of a broken bellows. The fire sputters, the wind howls, the shutters creak, the lice bite, you toss, you turn, you scratch. Maybe you doze off for a bit. But then the church bell rings. It's 3 a.m. Why? Who knows? Maybe someone died. Maybe it's time for monks to chant. Maybe the bell ringer just can't sleep either. And even if the world outside did go silent, your dreams wouldn't help. Because medieval dreams are just nightmares with extra mud. You dream of floods, rats, tax collectors, losing your only shoe, or accidentally insulting a noble and waking up in the stocks. Sometimes you dream of bathing, and wake up furious when you realize it was a lie. So yes, sleep exists, But it's not restorative, it's a truce with the filth and noise. A fragile negotiation that always ends too soon. And when you do finally open your eyes, surprise, it's dawn. Again. You survived the lice, the rats, the stew, the slop bucket, the bell, the goats, and the dream where your teeth fell out and you married a turnip. Congratulations. It's morning again. The cycle resets, not with grace, but with a cough, a creak, and a very loud rooster who clearly hates you. The straw beneath you is warm. That's not a good thing. Something peed there, possibly the baby, possibly the dog, possibly you. You stretch, something pops. Your joints sound like old furniture breaking. You stand slowly, hoping the floor isn't wet again. It is. The church bells ring before the sun finishes rising. You shiver as you pull on your tunic, still damp from yesterday's sweat and today's dew. You reach for your boots, one's missing. Your sibling used it to kill a rat. Again. You grunt, pull on your surviving footwear, and step outside into the same cloud of stink and noise you left behind 5 hours ago. The street already smells like beer, rot, and fish. The blacksmith is hammering something to death. The town crier is shouting about taxes. Someone's already emptied a bucket out the window. A goose hisses at you like it knows your sins. A man is arguing with his cow. You're tired, you're itchy, you're hungry, and yet you keep moving. Because that's life here. There's no pause, no vacation, no me time, just another day of filth, noise, and barely avoiding death via chamber pot. You nod at your neighbor. He nods back. Neither of you say a word, because you both know it's starting again,